All right, brother. So we were both sent a video of an episode of the Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett, and the guest is Dr. Tara Swart. I think that's her name.
Swart.
Swart, S-W-A-R-T, and she has written a book on neuroplasticity or something or other. I don't know. I haven't looked it up, honestly. But yeah, so we were sent this clip and we watched it, and we're going to react to it because Dr. Tara here has written her book, and she's making her rounds on the podcast circuit. And, you know, when people do that, they write a book and they go on a podcast tour, they always tell the truth. Setting everybody.
Yeah. I was holding it in, but
I'm poisoning the well.
couldn't hold it in. Bless her heart.
Here we go. Let's watch this thing.
Yeah.
In your book, you talk about the mechanisms of neuroplasticity. What are the mechanisms of neuroplasticity and the three factors that have the biggest impact on changes in the brain?
So the first one is myelination, and anyone who does a lot of sport who repeats a certain, weight training will understand that that's what's happening in their muscles. You know, when I said, you come here pretty much every day and you sit with someone and you interview them and you're really great at asking questions. That's like something you're super good at, that because you repeat it, it becomes like a superpower. And that means that what's happening.
So I think most of us would call this muscle memory.
Right.
Yeah. Where are the, just wondering if I can, oh, here we go. Let's watch this at 1.5 speed. Because this interview, honest, is just like so low energy.
Happening there is myelination. So myelin is a fatty substance that coats some neural pathways, and those pathways become fast pathways. Now, there's a reason from evolution why we have some fast pathways and some slow pathways. And the reason is that if you put your hand in the fire...
You know what I think about is funny is people who will say the reason we have X thing is from evolution, but then they'll go on to say the body's not designed to do something, or it's designed to do this thing.
Right.
Fire, your reflex to snatch your hand out is a fast pathway, but your pain reflex is a slow pathway, because if you're incapacitated by pain, the minute you put your hand in the fire, you wouldn't be able to get away from it. One of the mechanisms of neuroplasticity is becoming even better at something that you're really good at, and that's happens through myelination. The most common one, which is something that you're quite good at, but if you had loads of time, you could become really good at it, but you maybe don't have loads of time, happens through synaptic connection. So that's the one that can feel like quite hard work, but if you put in the effort, then you can change your brain. So that means that neurons that already exist in the brain connect up with each other and start to form new pathways. And the third mechanism, which doesn't happen a lot in the adult brain, but it does happen around the hippocampus because we do lay down new memories in life, happens a lot in children's brains, is called neurogenesis. And that is little embryonic nerve cells that float around in the brain actually becoming fully formed nerve cells, neurons, and connecting up through synaptic connection and maybe getting myelinated. And there's a growth factor that's involved in that, the embryonic cell becoming an adult cell, which is called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And trophic means growth, so neurotrophic is growth of neurons.
Trophic, like hypertrophic. Hypertrophy.
Hypertrophy.
And the things that contribute mostly to that are aerobic exercise and eating dark-skinned foods. Yeah.
What?
In foods?
Yeah. So let me just cover the exercise one first, because this is one of my fun facts, which is that if you are regularly
Fun facts. Let's cover the exercise one.
doing aerobic exercise, the turnover of those cells in your brain is about 13-14%.
So like the amount of the speed in which they like die off.
No, the speed in which they go from embryonic to full-grown cell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So because we want neurogenesis to happen.
Okay.
If you haven't been doing exercise for a while and then you start, the rate of cell turnover is like 30%. So it increases after a period of inactivity with new aerobic exercise. So that's my excuse for like being a couch potato half the time and then starting up again.
Oh yeah. Who are you kidding? Okay.
So I just want to jump in here because you could tell from his, facial expression, his reaction, so the notion that there's just going to be this impressive increase in the number of cells that are being converted from what'd she say, embryonic to like a fully formed brain cell. Like you could just exponentially increase that by just periodically doing aerobic exercise. like on its face, that just sounds trivially false.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'll go for 2 weeks doing exercise, and then I'll stop doing it, and then I'll pick it back up a month later. So that way, every time I do this exercise, like I'm just steadily increasing the amount of new brain cells. Like that just sounds.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Bless her heart.
Okay, so
Sorry.
you're making those connections.
Yeah, making the embryonic cells grow into new cells and then connect up with existing ones.
So I want to make sure I'm super clear on this. So if I'm trying to speak a different language, by doing exercise, that has an impact on.
Oh, it'll help you learn and retain memories. Yeah.
So in simple.
So I did a little bit of looking up here, and I could not actually find that exercise has been shown to improve your ability to like learn languages or learn new skills. Or I honestly don't know where she's getting that from. So exercise does help with like prevention of cognitive decline. But I could not find anything that shows, well, people who exercise more are able to, you know what I mean? Like pick up languages or learn math at a faster rate or whatever the case may be. And if we look at like some of the smartest people on the planet, like Elon Musk, people have their ins and outs about that, Albert Einstein, but like people we would consider to have really, really high abilities to take in and retain new information, like those people don't exercise. So like what?
The only thing I can think of is that if you're exercising on a regular basis and your body is healthy, then maybe you could be a little bit more alert, during the day, or a little bit more alert when you're studying. But doing exercise to grow new brain cells, there's no magic bullet to that. If we could do that, let's isolate which exercise grows the most.
And that's what she's saying. It's
brain
aerobic
cells.
exercise.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
What
So
kind?
I was able to find there is some research primarily in rodents where aerobic exercise improved the what's the word they use? Basically the size of the hippocampus. So they were able to measure that before and then after, putting them through an amount of aerobic exercise, and there was some increase in the hippocampus of the brain.
Okay.
And then there is a little bit of research in humans where aerobic exercise does help with that hippocampus part, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to learn things faster or learn things better or improve memory, or that's not what there is no evidence to show that. So she's it's like two truths and a lie, right?
Yeah.
She's taking a little bit of truth and then she's drawing she's extrapolating from it something that hasn't been shown.
Yeah.
In simple language, if I'm doing aerobic exercise, my ability to accelerate my neuroplasticity will increase.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, there's no evidence for that.
What if it's like not aerobic exercise? What if I'm just like lifting big weights?
There are benefits to your brain of other types of exercise, but weight training doesn't relate to neurogenesis as much.
Okay.
This isn't so much about language, but it's another example of mind over matter. So this was an experiment done on 2 groups of weightlifters.
Yeah, before we get into this, so anyone who's written a book and then they go on their podcast tours and they start saying there was a study that said X,
Name that.
Usually is completely wrong.
Yeah. Name it. Cite
You
it.
might like this one.
Yeah. Well, it's in her book. You have to buy the book.
Not going to do it. Wouldn't be prudent that this junk. Sure.
Hey, is your microphone back on?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's probably just because you were a little far away.
Yeah. I coasted away because that's like a singer. I didn't want to make this. Wouldn't be prudent this junk.
That's a big compliment. Thank you so much. You think I'm a weightlifter? You think I identify as a weightlifter? You looked at me and thought weightlifter.
Totally.
Thank you so much.
This was finger and elbow weights, though, so maybe not so glamorous in this experiment.
Okay.
So one group lifted finger or elbow weights. I think this was a 2-week study, and they showed, I think it was about 40% increase in muscle mass of the targeted muscle group for those weights.
Okay, let's stop it there. So number one, I was not able to find any study that even closely resembled what she's about to go on to say. But she just said there was a group that used finger and elbow weights for 2 weeks, and they saw an increase of 40%. Dwayne, look at your fingers and imagine them growing by almost half the diameter they are right now. You know how
Ew.
fat your hand would be?
Yep. Yep, like a doughboy.
And then elbow, I don't even know what elbow weights means.
I've never heard of it.
What are you, because there's no elbow, like were they working forearm muscles, or is it tricep and bicep? You know what I mean? Or did they attach a weight and so then you're working your deltoids? Like, I don't understand what you're saying. But just imagine any part of those growing by 40%. Do you realize how much money people spend on performance enhancing drugs to try to grow their muscles by 3 to 5%?
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
So on its face right here, like we haven't even gone into anything, these people grew their fingers by 40%. Get out of town.
Yeah, is that her selection of weightlifting? His fingers and arms? Really?
Well, she's just saying that there was this study, right? And that she's about to tell us that there's 2 groups. And one group had finger and elbow weights, and they grew the muscles directly working those finger and elbow weights by 40% in 2 weeks. Of all the muscles in your body that it would be really, really, really difficult to see an increase in muscle size over 2 weeks, it would be your hands.
Yes, absolutely.
Their counterparts only imagined lifting weights for 2 weeks. They lifted no weights for 2 weeks. They just sat there and they visualized themselves lifting weights, and they had a 13% increase in muscle mass.
Wait. I'm going to do a deadlift right now of 335. Wait. Did it.
Does she expect anyone to believe this? Is this real life? They just sat around and imagined lifting weights, and their
And they grew
muscles grew by 13%. So the amount that she's saying, she's either, so if the study actually exists, she's either just really messing up whatever those percentages mean, but the way that it's being delivered, she's saying that the one group increased their muscle mass in their fingers and elbows, whatever that means, by 40%. And then the other group, who just sat around thinking about lifting weights, increased it by 13%. Let me see if let me just do some quick math here, just to show how ridiculous this is. So
man, if I knew that, man, I'd be out in the gym every day in my mind.
Yeah.
You know?
So I currently weigh 190 pounds, and let's give a generous, because we want to show because I want to give the least amount of muscle mass. Let's go a generous 18% body fat.
Mm-hmm.
Minus 18% body fat, which would leave 155.8 pounds of lean, not just muscle, but that would be skin, bones, organs, so everything excluding fat mass. And then let's say my muscle mass of that is 60%. So I would have roughly 93.5 pounds of muscle mass on my body. And if I just sat around thinking about lifting weights, and I could grow my muscle mass by 13%,
Wow. Man.
That would, in 2 weeks, Dwayne, that would be an increase. Hold on, 105.6. This thing. 12 pounds of muscle.
Yeah.
Does
12
this
pounds.
lady know what it takes to put on 12 pounds of muscle in a year?
Obviously not, because she admits she doesn't lift weights. She's a couch potato. By her own admission.
So, yeah, so here you go. There was a study that said this, and if we just go on face value off of just what she said, the people who sat around, okay, so if I was in this study, if I just sat around for 2 weeks thinking about lifting weights, I would gain 12 pounds of muscle in 2 weeks
Mhm.
without touching a single weight, without any kind of increase in caloric intake, just spontaneous muscle mass increase
No
of
protein
13%.
drinks. No, yeah. No
None of
resistance
that.
training. No blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah, wow. She
All
should put
right.
that. They
Yeah.
could put that in a pill.
Bro, do you know how much money you could make if you could actually do that?
A jillion.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going to the...
Interesting. So we can tell our brain to grow muscle.
You see his face? How he's just like, this
Oh,
just
yeah.
sounds like, in their words, bollocks.
Bollocks.
Have you been secretly doing that,
No,
Steve?
but I could be doing that instead. I've been going to the gym. It'd be much easier if I could just watch the football and tell myself that I'm lifting weights.
It would be much easier if you could do that, wouldn't it? It's almost like it's just not true.
I don't think you can watch the football. I think the whole like visualization and intention and attention stuff was an important part of it.
I mean, that speaks to the power of our thoughts again, doesn't it? Really, if our thoughts,
The intention. So you have to be intentional about it. It can't just be a passive thing where you're watching TV and then periodically you have to be intentional about it.
can tell our brain to grow muscles. Has that been? Is that?
It's in the book.
But is it like?
It's in the book, Dwayne.
No
Buy my
wonder.
book.
It's in the book.
It's in the book.
Is it? Is that widely accepted as the truth? I'm surprised there's not like personal trainers that just sit you down in an empty room and just go right.
Well, think about the number of athletes that use visualization as part of their training. Of course, they do the exercise and the
Of course, they do the exercise.
Well, there you
Come
go.
on, man.
There you go.
practice and everything, but that's hugely used in sports.
Interesting. It's obviously not a case that I would just then go home and start imagining working out, but it does again remind me of the importance of just thinking about positive things that are in line with my goals.
Yeah. I mean, what's the harm in imagining yourself more muscular or more youthful alongside eating the dark foods and getting enough sleep? It's like it's part of the package. Do you want to know what you should eat so that you can...
Please, what is this dark-skinned foods?
So basically, at the basic level, we want people to have a healthy, balanced diet, mostly plant-based. But where you can choose a darker version of a food, the pigment in the skin of that food has higher levels of antioxidants called anthocyanins, and they also contribute to neurogenesis. So it's basically like eating black beans instead of white beans, or eating blueberries instead of strawberries, dark chocolate instead of milk chocolate, purple sprouting broccoli instead of green broccoli. And good quality coffee counts as well. Yeah, so I try to vary what I eat, but also always choose the darker option if I can.
Okay, so is there anything else that...
Dude.
All right. So the darker pigmentation on the exterior of foods is due to these anthocyanins, which is correct. And so she's saying always try to make the choice. If you could choose a darker version of that food, then this somehow results in an increase in myelination, as she was saying, or neuroplasticity, because anthocyanins. So, again, there's just no evidence to suggest that black beans will improve your ability to learn things faster than white beans. There's just no evidence for that. So, yes, anthocyanins, an increase in anthocyanins overall will help with that stuff. And again, like just the extrapolation from the current literature that we have on, so anthocyanins are just an antioxidant, and what we have currently is that increasing the amount of plant-based antioxidants, right? So having a more plant-based diet will reduce your risk for things like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, so neurocognitive deterioration. There really isn't any evidence to then extrapolate from that to say, well, if you eat these things, then you're going to learn things faster, or you're going to learn new things better, or you're going to have better memory. She's just, again, like, I'm not sure what kind of a doctor is. I feel like it's a proctologist because most of these things are being extracted from self-administered colonoscopies. That was a joke there. She pulled it out of her
I
butt.
totally got it. I'm waiting for the audience to have that moment to laugh. And there they go. They're laughing now.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so the one named diet that we have regarding cognitive health, which is primarily, the slowing of deterioration, is called the MIND diet. And in the MIND diet, what you have is the increase of green leafy vegetables, all other vegetables, berries specifically, but not just fruits overall, but berries specifically, nuts, olive oil, whole grains, fish, beans, and poultry. So this notion of dark-skinned foods just isn't in there for the MIND diet. It's mainly green leafy vegetables, and then again try to eat all other vegetables, so try to get as much variety in there as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we have. Do darker pigmented skins have more anthocyanid? Like, yeah, but is it enough to say that there's some measurable or noticeable difference in your ability to learn a new language? No.
Right.
No, that's not there. So I'm not really sure where she's getting that from.
One needs to know about the process of neuroplasticity. So from what I've ascertained so far, it's about understanding the patterns we have in our brain, understanding the consequences of them. Repetition is key to establishing new pathways. Is there anything else that I need to be really aware of? Because I do want to grow my brain and change my brain.
Yeah. So the accountability piece, which we've discussed, but also creating the conditions in your body for your brain to be able to do all of that stuff. And so, this is a bit of repetition, but sleeping roughly 8 hours a night, having regular sleep and wake times seems to have an additional benefit. We don't know why. So within an hour, so go to sleep between 10 and 11, wake up whenever. Not being sedentary, so being physically active doesn't necessarily mean you have to pound it at the gym. To be honest,
wait a minute, she just said that you could do this by not going to the gym and just thinking about it.
Right. Yep.
In terms of neuroplasticity, you don't want to do too much high intensity exercise because it spikes your cortisol levels. So
all right, and again, the idea, this spiking of cortisol levels. So let's just grant that high intensity activity, such as resistance training or interval training, quote unquote, spikes your cortisol. It does that in the short term, but the long term outcomes of high intensity activity are only positive and beneficial. I mean, to a certain degree. So, being a professional athlete isn't really a positive thing for your health benefit, but the average person who's going to the gym, who may train just a little bit harder at a higher intensity, those things are associated with better health outcomes, not worse.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not all the people who are suffering from Parkinson's and Alzheimer's are not, high intensity interval training athletes. That's not what's happening.
Right.
So it's better to do kind of quite gentle exercise, eating 30 different plant products a week and varying the color as much as possible.
See, varying the color as much as possible. I thought we were supposed to pick the dark-skinned vegetables, so there's inconsistency in what she's saying. Just
varying the colors.
Yeah, 8 minutes.
Managing your stress, whether it's through meditation or just like removing the causes of stress. If you're doing and being hydrated, if you are doing all of those things and you want to play at level 2 of the game, you could start doing time-restricted eating. So I only eat between 12 noon and 8 p.m., but you could do 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So that kind of fasting is very beneficial for your brain as well, but only if you've got the foundations right. It's not going to help you if you don't.
What does it do for the brain, fasting, intermittent fasting?
Well, it helps to regulate your blood sugar levels. So, spiking blood sugar levels aren't good for your body or your brain.
All right, so here we go. So time-restricted eating, or people call it intermittent fasting, has not been shown to improve glycemic control better than any other method of caloric restriction. And I have to argue with people on this all the time. So this idea of blood sugar spiking, we did the whole blood glucose thing, and there doesn't appear to be any long-term health benefit to reducing the number of quote-unquote spikes. Nobody can seem to define those things, but just an increase in a blood glucose excursion, no matter, regardless of how small or large it is.
Right.
But let's, for simplistic sake here, she's saying blood sugar spikes. So let's take 1 cup of rice, okay? And she's saying that you should eat all of that 1 cup of rice within a shorter window of the 24-hour day. So if I have that 1 cup of rice at one time of the day, I'm having all of that 1 cup versus splitting it up over 4 meals. So I have a quarter cup, quarter cup, quarter cup, quarter cup. Which do you think is a bigger blood sugar spike? 1 cup of rice or a quarter of a cup of rice?
Well, you think one.
One. The number of carbohydrates you're consuming all at one time is enormously more than if you were to split that same amount of carbohydrates up over several eating periods of the day. So the idea that you're reducing your blood sugar spikes by restricting the time of, no, you're cramming all of it into a smaller window of the day, so you're having a higher blood sugar spike, and that's what we need to be concerned with.
Massive spike, yeah.
A big, massive spike. If I have a quarter a cup of rice, the blood glucose excursion from that is significantly lower than if I was to have 1 cup of rice. It just, on its face, it doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
And so the idea that fasting or caloric restriction is associated with improved brain function, that's nonsense as well. Obesity does seem to be the factor for which a lot of the cognitive decline, the problems that we have in brain function, seems to be related to that. Now, not that you have to weigh 350 pounds to have that problem. There is such a thing as sarcopenic obesity, which we see in our elderly populations, where you could be of a normal body weight, but the amount of fat to muscle mass that you have, you have more significant enough to affect your brain. And that's the thing. So it's not fasting or caloric restriction in and of itself that's positive for cognitive function. It's maintaining a healthy amount of body fat or a healthy body weight that seems to be the driving factor. There's nothing magical about intermittent fasting that's going to do anything for you. If that helps you, hey, do it so much. But let's not pretend like your blood sugar spikes are less. It's not, because you're cramming all of those carbohydrates into one meal rather than splitting it up.
And fasting and calorie restriction, they do have like brain health and longevity benefits, but that, only if your foundations are right. Somebody who's stressed or eats badly or doesn't sleep enough will not benefit from time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting, because it is a form of stress on your body, but it's a form of stress that your body can take and use to build resilience if the baseline level of stuff is good.
And so, just no. It doesn't. So the idea that you're not going to see improvements if you were to do intermittent fasting and you lost a significant amount of weight and you increased your muscle mass significantly and you became a more healthy, more fit version of yourself, you wouldn't see any benefits from that, is just dumb. So we'll fast forward this because there was some other part at the end. I can't remember what the timestamp was, but we don't need to listen to this whole thing.
I think someone in the comments actually challenged me, because there's one day when I'm filming Dragon's Den and I'm filming myself, I'm just talking about what's going on, and I go, I really need a coffee this morning. And I stop myself and say, I shouldn't say need. And then I go, there's something about this casual use of the word need throughout our lives that is disempowering me. It's making me a slave to the coffee. So I make this point, which I'm sure people think I'm a little bit weird for making, that I really need to not say the word need associated to things, because I will then probably develop a psychological and maybe somewhat of a physical need for that thing.
And it's also just bringing that word need into your life, like you don't have enough, like that you need something. I'm constantly changing my words, like tweaking them like that. So I would say, oh, I'm going to treat myself to a coffee.
And that was your decision. You were powerful there.
Yeah.
That's a choice you made.
Yeah.
There's
I think I could probably agree with this. Like, I think the word need is overused by people, and that may have some impact into your daily life and in the actions that you take.
I'm really interested in how she's laying all this stuff down, but we're going back to like imagining yourself working out. What if I just imagine myself to eat darker greens?
You're not wrong, Dwayne. You're not wrong.
I know.
By her own logic, that ought to work, right?
It should.
You should experience some amount of benefit. It might not be as much if you were to actually do it, but according
and
to
if I got
her,
10%, man, I'd be happy.
By that own logic, yeah.
13%, I'd be happy.
That should work. She talks about a couple other studies in here that she just mangles, and I want to get to those.
And the universe will
on your brain, so your thoughts, your beliefs, your actions. So where I've called my book The Source, I have said your brain is the source of you being able to attract everything that you want into your life. So I sat down one summer and I researched the laws of attraction and just looked at whether I could explain them through cognitive science, which is psychology and neuroscience, and I could. So I was kind of like, oh, I'm onto something here. And
I think that's probably true. So this idea, the laws of attraction, probably can't be explained through neuroscience, right? Like you start thinking about something that you want to happen, and you may either consciously or subconsciously start doing the things that will lead to that thing. I think probably can be explained.
Man, I'm sorry, I'm still stuck.
Still hung up on that?
I'm gonna picture myself as being rich, and I'll at least be 13% richer.
Rich and swole.
Rich and swole, absolutely. Gains, man, gains.
And the first stage for me was understanding that it is absolutely to do with the way that you think, but then it's not magically like attracting something in the atmosphere. It's to do with the changes that you make based on your thought process. I do believe in vision boards, but I call them action boards because I see them as a representation of what I want, but I still have to go out there and make those things happen.
Stop.
I think it's also much more empowering.
Stop. Okay. Now we're talking about vision boards. Wow. Going back to the thing about envisioning something that if you want something better for yourself, or you're trying to attract a certain kind of person, or you're trying to attract a certain group of people, I think that can come about just by if you can muster up, or if you can develop a confidence about yourself, that's the biggest thing you could do. And so if you feel confident about yourself, you can bring people around you because people are drawn to confidence. If you just because you dress better it's a fallacy, and there's a lot of social study on this. Don't ask me to cite them to you now, but I can. But there's social study about if you want to draw people to you, and suddenly you start wearing nice clothes, and they're like, hey, I've never noticed him before. Once they start talking to you and you don't have any confidence, maybe you can't make a complete sentence.
Yeah.
Well, that's gone. So confidence about yourself and who you are, that's the biggest thing you can do. You can't imagine that. You have to actually put that into gear. Now, it's not as hard as some people think it is, but it is something that you have to take a step. You have to consciously take a step and do. Doesn't have to be your clothes. People, you dress for success. That helps. But if you're ignorant, it's not going to help you. Sorry. That's just the way it is. Just the way it is.
To believe that it's your brain that's making that stuff happen and not some external force that you're not really sure what it is.
This point about aging generally, longevity and aging, one of the really interesting things you talk about in the book is this idea of sort of psychological priming and psychological priming of aging. And that psychological priming is the effects that the mindset of aging has on our physical body, how our thoughts about aging affect our physical abilities. What I interpreted from that is our thoughts about aging have an impact on our aging.
Yeah, so actually there's a really fascinating study. It's one of my favorite ones to talk about, which was 3 groups of octogenarians.
What's an octogenarian?
People in their 80s.
Okay.
And one group was the control group, so they just lived like normal for a week. One group had to reminisce about being in their 60s for most of the week, whenever they had an opportunity to. And one group were actually driven to retrofitted versions of their homes that looked like what their house looked like 20 years ago. They were given newspapers dated from 20 years ago. They had photos of themselves in that house when they were in their 60s. And one of the things was they got there and they were sort of like, okay, who's going to carry our suitcase up to the bedroom or whatever? And they were like, no, you're 60 now. You carry your own suitcase. So it literally started from the minute they got there. And these little old ladies had to, and gentlemen had to carry their cases up. After 1 week, the people in that group were taller because their posture improved. They had better musculoskeletal coordination than they had a week before. In before and after photos that were shown to people that didn't know them, they were rated as younger in the 1 week after photos and the photos from arriving at that place. And the reminiscing group also had some improvements, but not as much as the group that lived like they were in their 60s.
And so there was 3 groups.
Yeah.
The ones that went back and relived their life, the ones that reminisced, and the ones that did nothing at all.
Yeah.
Wow. And that really goes.
Wow. Okay. So this actually was a study. This is called the Clockwise study. And she is 100% incorrect about there being 3 groups. There was only 1 group. And they went to, they spent a week sequestered in basically a residence that was outfitted, which he used retrofitted to appear as though it was 20 years ago on the inside. It was not designed to look like their home. They did not have pictures of them in there from 20 years ago. None of that's true. So these people did go in there and they did spend a week living in a house where they played the radio from, they had songs on the radio from 20 years ago, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Now, no one measured how tall they were. No one took actual objective measurements of posture or anything like that. And let's see, they showed substantial improvements in flexibility, dexterity,
yeah,
memory, hearing, it says posture, cognitive ability, and general well-being. They even looked younger to outside observers who were shown photos of them before and after the experiment. So those things are true. Now, does this have to do with them actually thinking that they were 20 years younger? My first thought would be no, it's just that they were more active. They were less sedentary in this home because they had to act as though they were 20 years ago. So they were getting more daily exercise. They were probably, whenever this study was done, 1979. And so what does it say? 1959. So the houses were designed to look like it was in 1959. So they probably ate differently. You basically had a week on vacation. So, it probably their mood improved, yada, yada, yada. And, so not necessarily that they had fewer wrinkles or whatever, but just like you were saying, like their confidence probably improved, their mood probably improved. So the way that they appeared in the photos before and after, they probably seemed, more tired looking or disgruntled in the photos before. And then after, they're a little bit happier, maybe a little more rejuvenated.
That's the word.
Yeah. And then the ability, the increase in flexibility and dexterity just comes from doing things. So the idea that this is because of this 20-year, reminiscent thing, I don't think is explained by that. I think it's just explained by just doing more and just being happier after a week.
Yeah, happy is the word. So
yeah.
if you're happy, and if you're an octogenarian, I'm telling you, they want to be 20 years earlier.
Sure, yeah.
They want to be. And if you put them in that situation, in things that they are so familiar with, and in the wheelhouse of their life, they're going to be happier. They're going to be encouraged then, not from an external point of view, but from an internal point of view. They want to do stuff. They want to move around. They want to do something.
Yeah, and when you're smiling and you generally have a less stressful expression on your face, you appear younger.
Yeah.
So
it goes to show the impact of what we think about ourselves and then all of the physiological consequences of that.
Now, I understand what he's taking away, but because he's been told that there was a control group when there was no control group. She made that up to try to increase the credence in what she's put in her book and what she's telling people. She made up this control group, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To try and give more credence. Now the time frame is 1 week. The number of people who did this is very low, and the reproducibility of the study is not high. So she had to make some stuff up, including these other two groups, in order to give credence to what she's saying. And that led this guy here to believe something that's not true.
You talk about this, your eyes as well.
Mm.
You were going to get, was it like laser eye surgery?
No.
I love this.
No, it's just like,
People told you needed glasses on.
well, my optician told me. So he's of Indian origin, same age as me. And he said, oh, I think, you're probably going to need reading glasses next year. And I was like, no, I do not want reading glasses. That makes you look really old. And he was like, yeah, I know we both look younger than we are, but, your eyes are going to age just like anybody else's. And I was like, no, they are not. So I left, came back a year later. He said, oh, how's it going with the reading? I said, it's fine. And he sort of went, okay, Tara. So he's doing my eye test. He spins around on this little chair halfway through and says, your eyes haven't got worse. They haven't even stayed the same. They've got better. And I said, I know. And he said, what have you been doing? And I said, well, I just said no to you when you said, I'm going to have to get reading glasses. And when I'm like looking at my phone or a book, and it feels like it would be a bit easier if I moved it further away, I just don't.
So, Dwayne, the very thing that was causing her eyes to get worse is the thing she did to make her eyes get better.
Well, I'm going to say this about that. So there are exercises that some people can do, not everyone, that can increase certain aspects of your vision. For an older person, and I say older person, say about 45, 55, 65, right through there, you can, if you just daily do some exercises about focusing on something, typically on distance, you can increase your distance sight a little bit, but that doesn't work for everyone. And like you just said, the thing that that causes her vision to get bad is it made it get better. So that's
right. She literally didn't make any changes.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I'll just speak from my standpoint. I mean, so my eyesight was great until we entered into the computer age, and I spent a large amount of time behind computer screens. Maybe there's a 13% chance that if I did some exercises on a daily basis, at distance vision, that I'd have been fine. But when I hit 40, my eyes magically just went. And that's the thing with most people.
Yeah, mine too. So I have to wear readers, and it was like the last time that I went and had a checkup. The doc there told me, she said, well, you're on the cusp of it. You don't necessarily need readers, but they may help. You may try them out. And I got some readers, and they help. Your eyes deteriorate over time, and that's the case. And then I got something in my eye here, and I went down to the local optometrist and had him remove them. And he told me, he was like, has anybody ever told you you have cataracts? And I was like, no. And he's like, yeah, they're there just a little bit. So there's nothing that you can do. There's nothing you can do, especially as like, yeah, it may be easier to move that thing farther back, but just moving it closer isn't going to improve that at all.
Right.
Like the only thing that removes cataracts is surgery.
Exactly. Yeah, or astigmatism. It's just
there
you just
are
can't magically make it go away.
Yeah, there are some things. So I did listen to a podcast on Sigma Nutrition where they had on a guy who deals with specific nutrients. This might be a good topic for us to look into, but there are specific nutrients where you increase it like 2,000% by taking a supplement, and you can see some improvements there. But the idea that is just like, well, I'm just not going to move my phone back when I read, and that's going to make my eyes improve. That's just nonsense. All right. So, that's pretty much it. I mean, we're we're there. So,
We're beating a dead horse there.
I mean, we just live in an age where people go on podcasts and just say the dumbest things, where if you just think about it for 30 seconds, it's just trivially false.
You know where else that happens? TED Talks.
TED Talk. Just. All right. Well, that's that. Everybody, stop listening to Diary of a CEO. It's just misinformation. Yeah, hope you guys got something out of this, and we'll see you next time. Coach Lambie and Dwayne out.
See ya.